Welcome back. You're still watching The Situation, coming to you live from our studio here in Accra. I am Sami Wiafe, and as always, I'm here with my friend, colleague, brother, Fred Tete Jabano. We're talking about vote buying. In recent time, Ayawaso East constituency has dominated media discussion, and one name has come up in the whole conversation, which is Baba Jamal, Ghana's former High Commissioner to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There's accusation of vote buying during the party's parliamentary primary in the constituency on the 7th of February 2026. Baba Jamal eventually won, but clear videos on social media and across saw, TV sets being shared to delegates who were expected to cast their ballots in the primary. He's on public record to have said that these are gifts he gave to the delegates, and he said it's not an inducement, it's just a gift from him to the hard-working delegates of the Ayawaso East constituency. But then the broader conversation has come up that would there ever be a time where the issue of vote buying will go away from the politics of Ghana? The CDD and other civil society organizations have raised issues on this matter, that there is the need to do away with money or moneycracy in Ghana's politics. The former Speaker of Ghana's Parliament, Professor Michael Okwe, has also spoken on this matter. And he says it's about time we deal with it. The political parties on the other hand made attempt with the expansion of the various electoral colleges. So at least money will not have an influence on delegates or voters. But still, we are told that the special prosecutor is even investigating allegations of money or sharing or vote buying during the MPP presidential primary, which had a broader electoral college of over 200,000, and also investigating the same Ayawaso East primary issue. So today we're talking about the broader issue of how we deal with vote buying, which has dominated Ghana's politics, especially within the primaries of the two major political parties, the MPP and the NDC. And then we'll also talk about the committee that was set up by the NDC FEC to deal with this matter as far as Baba Jamal is concerned. But then before we do that, let's speak to someone who knows more about Ghana's politics. He's a former member of parliament for the Kumbungu constituency, somewhere in the northern region. His name is Ras Mubarak. He's been in parliament before. He's been on the ticket of the NDC before, and has gone through this same delegate system and getting to parliament finally. Is it a must for every candidate to pay something to delegates or influence delegates to get them elected as parliamentary candidates or presidential candidates before any major election? Let's speak to Ras Mubarak and get his thoughts on this matter. Ras, thank you very much for your time. You've been an MP before. Before you got to MP in Kumbungu, did you have to pay delegates or give them gifts before they finally nominated or selected you to be the party's candidate in that constituency?
Well, good evening. And the reality is that I was elected on the ticket of the NDC in one of the most progressive election systems that the NDC had put in place. In 2015, the NDC had the expanded electoral college, which meant that every card-bearing member of the NDC had an opportunity to have a say in who became the candidate of the party in various constituencies around the country. So in my constituency, for instance, you had 18,000 people who voted on the day of the primary, and I wiped everybody on the floor because it was a popularity contest, and so it was impossible in the primary of 2015 for anyone to induce or pay delegates money. Now, the NDC had adopted this system because we all had come to the conclusion that, our politics had been overtaken by monetization. And if we're not careful, we'd have, drug barons and all manner of criminals either financing, elections in our country or by themselves, getting elected to the high office of, parliament and other positions, in the various parties. And, that could spell doom for our country. But sadly, the expanded electoral college system of the NDC in 2015 was infiltrated, by persons who were not on, card-bearing members of the NDC. And that led to a lot of ramifications. And instead of the party cleaning up the register and plucking the loopholes, the party decided to just, throw away a system that was very progressive and go back to the delegate system, where we had agreed that, look, it wasn't in the best interest of the country. So fast forward 2019, I contested in the small electoral college system. Now we had moved from, if I were to use Kumbungu as an example, we had moved from a primary that had 18,000 delegates voting to a primary that had 666 delegates voting. And the rest is history. I'm sure you might have heard or read about my complaints about vote buying in 2019, and even formally writing to the BNI to investigate the primary in Kumbungu, and also writing to the party complaining and asking that we take a serious look at the electoral system we had reverted to. But this is a canker that has engulfed politics, and all attempts would have to be made, to nip it in the bud. The thing is, vote buying destroys our politics. It destroys our democracy. It is illegal in the country, and it is not only those who give or induce delegates are people who may have fallen foul of the law, but those who receive the inducement, per the Political Parties Act, would have violated, the laws of our country as well. So as we, talk about these things broadly, we need to send a strong warning to persons who are delegates that, look, if the system were not to be changed and you make a habit of taking inducements from candidates, you could find yourself in very hot waters. And so, what needs to happen now for all the parties is for them to say never again and institute reforms that are forward looking, reforms that would make it near impossible for anyone to induce delegates, either in a constituency election, regional election, national election, or parliamentary or presidential elections. The thing is, laws by themselves do not stop crime. And that is why day in, day out, you read or see incidences of armed robbers being arrested and being jailed, in spite of the fact that they keep getting arrested. So the fact that you may have stringent laws would not by themselves stop people from attempting to induce delegates. What you need to do is to make it impossible for anybody to induce delegates, and that would come with expanding the electoral college, as we did in 2015, but also, having proper laws on party campaign financing. And this is something that, myself, the Honorable Yunus of Husseini, and several others had, championed and spoken about, extensively during our time in Parliament, because we keep getting people, throw in quite a lot of money in our politics, and nobody knows where these monies are coming from. So you need a system that would say, if Fred were to run for election in constituency A, he needs to declare where every peswa to his election is coming from. And if I'm a businessman and I want to, donate to a political party or a candidate, I need to have fulfilled my obligations under the law, which is I should have been able to pay all my taxes, before I can begin to even think about, supporting a candidate to run for elections. But that would also require for law enforcement agencies to be proactive, because in all of this, we haven't seen, the proactiveness of law enforcement agencies, in spite of the fact that, some of these incidences of vote buying are very pervasive. They are done
Raz,
brazenly.
if we say you don't see the proactiveness of the law enforcement, in recent times, we've seen the special prosecutor take interest in not just the Baba Jama one, but including the MPP presidential primary. So at least we are seeing some headway in that aspect.
I wouldn't agree with you. I mean, there were 5 candidates in that election, at least per the reports of the committee that the NDC set out, to investigate the allegations of vote buying. At least 4 of the candidates, had also, induced delegates. And so if the special prosecutor is extending an invitation to, only Baba Jamal, it tells you that, he just wants to, play to the gallery. Now, we also saw in the special prosecutor's report or public notice that they had begun, some investigation into the NPP primary. I mean, they didn't tell the public this until the Baba Jamal issue came out. And they knew that clearly, the public would ask that, but we saw incidences of, voter inducement in the MPP primary. So I'm saying it's not just a special prosecutor. Even the BNI on the ground should be able to send reports. The police should be, very proactive. Everyone, we all would have to be involved, including the chiefs and opinion leaders and assembly members and persons who matter in various constituencies, who see these things daily and, whenever there are elections and actually turn a blind eye, probably because they are by themselves, beneficiaries of some of these inducements. But it is destroying our country. I want to see a Ghana where every Ghanaian, male or female, of sound mind, especially women and the youth, being able to compete on an even keel in any election. Look, but for the fact that the NDC had expanded its electoral college in 2015, there was no way Sam George was going to beat E.T. Mensah. And I believe, the public would agree. This was a towering figure in the NDC, former minister, etc. Sam George didn't have the kind of resources, to match him. But for the electoral, the expansion of the electoral college, we would not have discovered the Isaac Adongos, the Clementa Parks, etc. So it tells you that when parties do the right thing by leveling the playing field, we get to discover more and more equally talented, brilliant young Ghanaians, men and women who could equally contribute, to the advancement of our country. And I don't see, especially for a social, I don't see why a social democratic party should be afraid of expanding its electoral college.
Yes.
Now, what has happened in, Ayawaso East should serve as a strong warning that the public would not put up with this kind of behavior in our country where our elections have been completely overtaken by people with money.
Ras, this is not the first time we've heard about vote buying. This is not the first time we've heard people complain. We've heard the political class complain. You heard CSO complaining. This is not the first time we've spoken about people expanding the delegate system, making sure that every member of each political party votes. The question is, you people within the political class, are you really interested in the expansion? Because I don't understand why every other election cycle, some of these things will happen. It would have people like Ras Mubarak come to say, look, let's do this, let's do this. Where is the commitment, and who is responsible of ensuring that these things are done from the political class? Because this decision or this action cannot be taken by CSOs or by the public. It is the political class. Where is the willingness, and how is it supposed to be done?
And then, Raz, before you answer that, I add up that because it knows the benefit of the political class, you are not interested in doing what Fred says you guys are supposed to do.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have been more right. It was the late Guyanese, politician and writer John Henry Clark who said that powerful people would never educate powerless people in what it means to take away the power from them. That the aim of powerful people is to stay in power by any means necessary, end quote. So indeed, the political class, I mean, in the 2015 primary of the NDC, you saw how big shots fell, all right? And obviously some people felt threatened by the fact that the party had opened enough. But look, we've gotten to a point or a stage in our politics, especially as a political party, where we can no longer resist calls by the public to reform and do the right thing. And I don't think that the NDC nor the MPP would miss this opportunity to actually, institute the necessary reforms to make it happen. But I would also like to encourage the public that we are players. We shouldn't just be spectators. We are stakeholders in the progress, especially of our country. And so if something is amiss, it shouldn't be only CSOs and newsmen and women who should, raise red flags about these things. That the public has a duty. And indeed, you saw the outcry from the public when the incidences of voter inducement erupted from Ayawaso East. And so we are getting to a point in our country where the politicians can no longer resist calls to do the right thing. I mean, it's unsustainable, and it's making our democracy more and more expensive. And it's also reducing the quality of representation in parliament, because it's become pretty much, something for the highest bidder. And you are getting more and more people leave parliament simply because they would rather stay out or not run for re-election, than to go into an election where they know they would lose because they haven't amassed sufficient amount of resources to run these elections. And one of the dangers to our democracy is that of all the laws we are passing in parliament, there are fewer and fewer MPs who are actually making meaningful contribution when it comes to legislation, whether it's at the committee level or at plenary. Chamber, most often very empty because people are busy out there looking for money, to keep their constituencies or looking for money for re-election. And there's got to be a stop to these things. And we've got to say enough is enough, and never again must these things occur. But if we open up and we don't pass legislation on party campaign financing, where there has to be a cap on how much every person running for political office could spend, you may have some, special people who could actually raise sufficient amount of money, to decide to induce delegates, be they 20,000 or 15,000 or 30,000, and for me, so we've got to be able to chew gum and walk. We've got to be able to do multiple things in addressing this issue of vote buying in our elections. And I can tell you, but for the legal challenges that would have confronted the NDC, the candidates who ran in Ayawaso East would all have been disqualified, but one. At least 4 of them would have been disqualified because the party found sufficient evidence that, look, voters had been induced. But of course, the party was confronted with the legal issue. And the legal issue is that if the Electoral Commission runs an election and certifies the election as free, fair, and credible, does the party has the legal authority to annul or nullify the election? The answer is a big no. And so that's where the NDC found itself. It was a big conundrum, as to what to do. It didn't want to be slapped with legal battles here and there. So they had to take a practical way out of the situation.
Ras, thank you. We ran out of time, so I'll say a big thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Ras Mubarak is a former member of parliament for the Kumungu constituency in the Northern region, the former CEO of the National Youth Authority, speaking to us there on the broader conversation of voter inducement, vote buying, and corruption-related issues as far as election is concerned, coming on the back of the Ayawaso East constituency NDC parliamentary primary. Fred?
Yes, Sammy. Let me just leave you with this quote from Oscar Ameringa.
Thank you.
He's a German politician.
Thank you, my brother.
He said that politics is a gentle art of getting votes from the poor and campaign funds from the rich by promising to protect each other from the other.
Repeat it.
Politics is the gentle art of getting votes from the poor and campaign funds from the rich by promising to protect each other from the other.
On that note, from the German scholar, which Fred Jabon has just read to us, is another exciting edition of The Situation that came to you live from our studio here in Accra. I'm Sami, we are for Hayes, Fred Tete Jabon. So come your way again. May the good Lord be with us all.